Chapter 14, Sweet Talk. Your lamination is actually decent today, Zara observed, leaning across the marble workstation to inspect Sofia's croissant dough. Butter smudged her left cheek, a violet streak of hair escaping her bandana. Usually you're too distracted by a certain traditional but apparently evolving instructor walking past the window every 5 minutes. The pastry kitchen hummed with morning activity, the rhythmic thump of rolling pins, the metallic whisper of bench scrapers against countertops, the hiss of steam from the industrial proofing cabinets along the back wall. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting golden patterns across work surfaces dusted with flour.
Says the woman who accidentally dropped butter 3 times when Carmen bent over to help you yesterday.
She pressed her palm against the rolling pin, applying even pressure across the dough's surface.
How are those private macaron lessons going, by the way?
We're being professional.
Zara's attempt at dignified restraint collapsed as quickly as an overproofed soufflé, her face breaking into an irrepressible grin.
Actually, she kissed me last night, after class.
Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper that nonetheless carried in the echoing kitchen.
In the walk-in.
Sofia bumped her friend's shoulder, leaving a ghostly flower handprint on Zara's sleeve.
Scandalous.
She gestured toward her with the rolling pin.
Was it everything your pastry dreams hoped for?
It was...
Zara sighed, eyes drifting toward the ceiling before snapping back to reality.
Don't change the subject. We were discussing you and Chef Grumpy but Gorgeous. May told me about your little coq au vin demonstration yesterday. Something about unexpected combinations.
It was a teaching moment.
Sofia kept her eyes fixed on her pastry, calculating the precise angle for her next fold.
Teaching what? Sexual tension through sauce work?
Sofia flicked flour at her friend with practiced accuracy.
Focus on your own love life. Did Carmen's lips taste like buttercream?
Actually,
Zara glanced over her shoulder before leaning closer, voice pitched for Sofia's ears alone.
Cinnamon. She'd been testing chai macarons and...
She straightened abruptly as May approached, her spine snapping upright like a soufflé in a hot oven.
Less gossip, more folding,
May advised, though her almond-shaped eyes crinkled with amusement.
though I did notice Marcus lingering by the pastry kitchen window again.
Sure enough, through the glass panes that separated the pastry classroom from the main corridor, Marcus stood in conversation with another instructor. His crisp chef's whites contrasted sharply with the dark wooden paneling behind him. As if sensing their attention, his eyes flickered toward Sofia, caught her watching, then quickly redirected to his colleague, but not before she noticed the telltale flush creeping up from his collar.
He's checking the temperature control,
Sofia muttered, pressing harder than necessary on her rolling pin.
Of your buns?
Zara suggested, eyebrows dancing with mock innocence.
My lamination is perfect.
The words emerged with more defensive heat than Sofia had intended.
I wasn't talking about the croissants.
Don't make me use this.
Sofia brandished the rolling pin like a fencing foil.
Speaking of temperature,
Zara continued, undeterred as she turned her own dough.
Carmen says the walk-in is surprisingly comfortable.
Is that why you volunteered to do inventory 3 times this week?
Some of us don't have to maintain professional distance.
Zara's voice softened, the teasing giving way to something gentler.
Though I saw how he looked at you during yesterday's demonstration, that wasn't professional anything.
Sofia concentrated on executing her final dough turn with mathematical precision, each movement calculated to avoid engaging with Zara's observation. The butter resisted slightly against her rolling pin, still cold enough to create perfect layers, but pliable enough to fold. A perfect balance, like so many things in baking.
It's complicated,
She finally admitted, the words barely audible over the ambient kitchen sounds.
Because you're making it complicated. You both clearly...
Zara stopped mid-sentence as Marcus passed by the window again, his tall figure casting a momentary shadow across their workstation.
Seriously? That's his 4th lap. The man's going to wear a groove in the hallway.
He's supervising classes.
He's supervising something.
This time, Sofia did brandish the rolling pin.
Shouldn't you be practicing your technique for Carmen?
Oh, I'm practicing lots of techniques.
Zara waggled her eyebrows with comic exaggeration.
Last night
Ladies,
May materialized beside them, appearing between workstations with the silent efficiency that had earned her the kitchen nickname, the Pastry Phantom. She examined Sofia's lamination with a critical eye.
your folding is suffering from your romantic commentary.
Sorry, chef.
They chorused, straightening like scolded children. The moment May moved to another station, Zara leaned toward Sofia again, undeterred.
Seriously, though, what are you going to do about Marcus?
Sofia watched him through the window, remembering how he'd defended her plating style to the class, how his eyes had softened when they worked together, how he'd demonstrated his unexpected willingness to bend on his rigid traditional stance. His profile was sharp against the corridor light, patrician nose, the strong line of his jaw, those surprisingly expressive eyebrows currently drawn together in concentration.
Nothing.
She said firmly, brushing flour from her hands with unnecessary vigor.
We're colleagues. It's professional.
Right. And Carmen and I are just studying pastry technique.
Speaking of studying,
Sofia nodded toward the doorway where Carmen had appeared, her dark hair tied back in a severe bun that somehow only emphasized her striking features. The female instructor pretended to examine equipment on a nearby shelf, but her eyes kept drifting to Zara with unmistakable intent.
Oh, I should, help her with inventory.
Zara's attempt at casual nonchalance failed spectacularly, as she nearly knocked over a container of pastry tips in her haste.
is that what they're calling it now?
Zara stuck out her tongue as she hurried off, leaving a trail of flour footprints across the polished floor. Through the window, Sofia saw Marcus again, this time actually pausing to watch her work. Their eyes met across the distance. He smiled. Small, but genuine, a softening of his usually stern expression, before continuing on his way.
Professional?
May commented, materializing at Sofia's shoulder with her habitual silence.
Completely.
May's knowing hum vibrated with amusement.
That's why he's walked past 6 times in an hour.
7?
Sofia corrected automatically, then cursed under her breath as May's face bloomed into a triumphant grin.
You know,
May said thoughtfully, checking Sofia's lamination with experienced fingers.
the best pastries combine precision with passion. Too much of either.
Ruins the end result?
Sofia supplied, carefully transferring her dough to a parchment-lined tray.
Or creates something unexpected and wonderful.
May patted her shoulder, leaving a ghostly flower handprint.
Just like the best relationships.
Sofia watched Marcus pass by once more, his profile noble against the morning light streaming through the corridor windows. His shoulders held their usual military straightness, but something in his gait seemed lighter, as if some invisible burden had shifted slightly. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, another dating app notification. She ignored it, the familiar urge to check the screen strangely absent. Some recipes, she was learning, were worth taking time to perfect. Through the walk-in window, she could see Zara and Carmen in close conversation. Checking inventory apparently required Carmen to stand close enough that their shoulders touched, her hand occasionally brushing Zara's arm for emphasis.
At least someone's getting their lamination sorted out.
Sofia muttered, setting her dough in the refrigerator to rest. May's laugh carried across the kitchen, drawing curious glances from other students.
Oh, honey, you have no idea how transparent your own folding technique is.
Sofia buried her face in her hands, flour dusting her cheeks, but couldn't suppress the smile that tugged at her lips. The familiar emptiness that had haunted her mornings felt strangely distant, replaced by something warmer, less defined, but somehow more substantial. Maybe some combinations really were worth the risk. Chapter 15, Fusion. 2 weeks into October, and the Barcelona morning air carried the first crisp notes of autumn. Sofia stood in Eduardo's sleek, modernist kitchen at the Novo Group's flagship restaurant, scanning the student externship rotation schedule. Her eyes kept returning to one particular pattern. Her name appeared next to Marcus's with suspicious frequency across the teaching assignments. She ran her finger down the laminated page, mentally calculating. 6 shared sessions out of 8 total rotations. The statistical improbability made her lips twitch.
Pure coincidence.
Marcus had said yesterday, when she'd raised an eyebrow at the assignments. His ears had turned that telltale pink that betrayed his otherwise flawless composure.
Of course,
She'd replied, fighting a smile.
just like it's coincidence that you keep volunteering to supervise Eduardo's molecular gastronomy kitchen, despite your well-documented opinions on culinary sleight of hand.
Now, watching him adjust a student's modern plating technique with surprising gentleness, Sofia wondered when exactly Marcus Blackwood had started embracing change. The towering glass walls of Eduardo's kitchen framed him against Barcelona's skyline, morning light catching on his silver-streaked temples as he bent over the student station.
The sphere needs to be centered.
He was saying, his precise fingers moving the molecular olive oil bubble with unexpected delicacy.
The traditional elements create a foundation for the innovative components. They should complement, not compete.
The student, Javier, one of their most promising first years, nodded enthusiastically, repositioning his components with newfound understanding. Sofia hid her smile behind her clipboard. 2 months ago, Marcus had called spherification culinary sleight of hand, designed to distract from fundamental taste deficiencies. Now he was teaching proper technique with the reverence usually reserved for his beloved mother sauces.
Something amusing, Chef Martinez?
She looked up to find him watching her, having crossed the kitchen with that silent efficiency that still startled her. For a man of his height, Marcus moved with remarkable stealth when he chose to.
Just admiring your evolution, Chef Blackwood.
She tapped her clipboard against her palm.
From molecular skeptic to spherification instructor in under 2 months. Impressive adaptation.
Adaptation.
He corrected, his accent crisping around the edges as it always did when she teased him. He moved to her station, close enough that she caught that subtle cologne beneath the kitchen aromas.
A chef must be willing to expand their horizons.
They were standing close again, that magnetic pull between them impossible to resist. The kitchen bustled around them, students checking temperatures, Eduardo demonstrating an advanced foaming technique by the central island, the whisper hiss of immersion circulators along the back wall. But in their bubble, time seemed to slow.
Even if it means embracing modernist techniques?
She adjusted a plate on his station, an unnecessary gesture that brought her briefly into his personal space.
What would your classical French mentors say?
They'd be appalled.
His mouth curved slightly. The closest Marcus typically came to an outright grin in professional settings.
Though perhaps they'd admit that some traditional elements are worth preserving within innovation,
Such as?
such as proper knife skills
Naturally?
and proper technique for...
His voice dropped lower, taking on that slight roughness that sent an involuntary shiver down her spine.
for methodology timing.
A crash from the prep station fractured their moment, shards of glass scattering across the polished concrete floor as one of the students dropped a tray of test tubes meant for a molecular demonstration.
I'll get the broom.
They said in unison, then caught each other's eyes and laughed. Sofia's bright and sudden, Marcus's deeper and more restrained, but no less genuine.
I never thought I'd see Marcus Blackwood laughing about broken molecular gastronomy equipment.
Eduardo commented, materializing beside them in his characteristic silent glide. His tailored chef's jacket, a modernist departure from traditional whites, caught the laboratory bright lights overhead.
Sofia, you're a miracle worker.
She's a sufficient instructor.
But his tone transformed the words into something approaching reverence.
High praise from a traditionalist?
Sofia teased, noting the warmth in his eyes that belied his formal phrasing.
Don't let it go to your head. Your foam is still too aggressive.
And your sauce reduction is still too timid.
Eduardo looked between them. a calculating gleam in his dark eyes.
You know, there's a chef's table event next week testing new fusion concepts for potential investors.
He tapped his finger against his lips thoughtfully.
We could use two perspectives, classical training and modernist innovation, in dialogue.
Professional collaboration.
Marcus said quickly, straightening his already impeccable posture.
Purely educational.
Sofia agreed, ignoring the knowing look Zara shot her from across the kitchen.
Of course.
Eduardo's eyes twinkled with poorly suppressed amusement.
Thursday evening, wear something nice.
He paused deliberately.
Professional nice naturally.
He glided away to correct a student's espuma technique, leaving them standing in their shared space, the invitation hanging between them like perfectly balanced seasoning.
We should go.
Marcus said finally, adjusting his immaculate cuffs. A habit Sofia had learned signaled mild nervousness.
For the students' benefit.
Obviously.
She nodded with exaggerated seriousness.
They need to see classical and modern techniques in harmony.
Exactly. Professional development.
Nothing else.
Their eyes met. Neither looked away. The kitchen timer screamed its electronic alert, making them jump apart like guilty sous chefs caught sampling the sauce. Sofia turned to check her demonstration setup, hyper-aware of Marcus's presence behind her, the subtle shift in air pressure when he moved closer.
That dress.
He said suddenly, his voice pitched for her ears alone. She kept her eyes on her spherification chemicals, measuring with scientific precision.
The blue one. From the faculty meeting last week.
He cleared his throat, the sound oddly vulnerable.
It was professionally appropriate.
Sofia bit back a smile, her hand stilling momentarily on the molecular ingredients.
I'll keep that in mind. Professionally.
She felt his eyes follow her as she walked away to assist a struggling student, and for once didn't fight the warm flutter in her chest that had become increasingly difficult to ignore. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another dating app notification. She'd stopped checking them lately, finding them as bland and unsatisfying as unseasoned court bouillon.
Chef Martinez.
She turned back. Marcus stood by his station, adjusting his cuffs again, shoulders uncharacteristically tense beneath his perfectly pressed chef's whites.
The chef's table.
His voice carried that hint of formality that emerged when he felt uncertain.
We should discuss the menu beforehand, perhaps. Dinner? To plan?
Professional dinner?
The question escaped before she could moderate her tone. His lips twitched, the furrow between his brows softening.
Is there any other kind?
Sofia thought of all their charged moments, their perfectly choreographed kitchen dance, how he'd learned to plate molecular components with the same care he gave classical sauces, how his rigid edges had gradually softened like butter reaching the perfect temperature for lamination.
I suppose we'll find out?
She said softly. His smile, a real one, not the controlled professional curve he presented to the world, transformed his face entirely, creating lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of a capacity for joy she was only beginning to discover. Later, supervising student prep work by the immersion circulators, Sofia caught Marcus watching her demonstrate a modernist technique to wide-eyed first years. But this time, instead of the skepticism that would have clouded his expression months ago, his face held something that looked remarkably like admiration, or maybe something more. The glass walls of Eduardo's kitchen turned Barcelona's afternoon light into something golden and transformative, casting everything in a glow that made the ordinary seem magical. Through the transparent barriers, the city spread below them, ancient stone and modern steel coexisting in perfect, imperfect harmony. Sofia adjusted the temperature on her circulator, the precise digital readout reflecting in the polished surfaces around her. Some recipes, she was learning, needed time to develop their full flavor profile, and some chefs, it seemed, needed time to realize that the best dishes combine tradition with innovation, just like the best relationships. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like perfectly tempered chocolate, still malleable, but with the potential to set into something unexpectedly wonderful. Chapter 16. Dress to simmer. It's not a date, Sofia insisted, staring in horror at the blue dress sprawled across her bed like a beautiful corpse. The one Marcus had mentioned. The one now sporting a massive bleach stain across the left side, where her ancient washing machine had decided to reinterpret the concept of gentle cycle. October sunlight slanted through her apartment windows, illuminating dust motes and the crime scene that was her bedroom. Clothes lay strewn across every surface, rejected options for a dinner that was absolutely, definitely not a date.
Sure.
Zara lounged on Sofia's bed, scratching behind Paella's ears. The massive orange cat had somehow become a regular visitor to Sofia's apartment, arriving each morning like clockwork to demand tribute.
That's why you're having a meltdown over a dress for your professional dinner.
I'm not having a meltdown.
Sofia tossed another rejected option onto the growing pile.
You've been staring at that stain for 10 minutes while stress dicing an onion.
Sofia glanced guiltily at her cutting board, perched precariously on her dresser. The perfectly uniform cubes of white onion gleamed in the morning light.
I was practicing brunoise.
At 10 a.m. on your day off?
Zara stood, plucking the knife from Sofia's hands with casual confidence.
Come on, we're going shopping.
I have other dresses.
Sofia gestured half-heartedly at the explosion of fabric surrounding them.
None that Marcus has ever noticed.
Zara pointed out, already raiding Sofia's closet with the determination of a health inspector at a suspect kitchen. Hangers scraped against the metal rod, a metallic symphony accompanying Zara's running commentary.
The man literally never comments on anything but chef whites and proper uniform standards. But that blue dress?
She waggled her eyebrows, the movement exaggerated by her purple-streaked bangs.
What were his exact words again? Professionally appropriate?
Sofia fought a smile at the memory, the expression feeling foreign on her face after 2 years of carefully maintained composure.
He was making a general observation.
Honey, Marcus Blackwood doesn't make general observations about anything except sauce consistency and knife technique.
Zara pulled another hanger out with theatrical flourish, examined the garment, then returned it with a disapproving shake of her head.
If he noticed your dress, then we need to find something that'll make him forget about proper kitchen protocol entirely. Too safe.
Zara declared 3 hours later as Sofia emerged from the boutique dressing room in a black sheath dress that hugged her curves with respectable restraint. The shop smelled of new fabric and subtle perfume, its soft lighting designed to flatter potential purchases and the women trying them on. Designer dresses hung like exotic specimens along the walls, organized by color rather than style. A rainbow of options Sofia would never have explored on her own.
It's classic.
Sofia smoothed the fabric over her hips, examining her reflection in the three-way mirror. The dress was perfectly acceptable, like a well-executed but uninspired chicken dish on a bistro menu.
It's boring.
Zara lounged on the velvet bench outside the dressing room, scrolling through her phone with half her attention.
Like serving chicken breast with no seasoning.
Speaking of seasoning,
Sofia smirked, catching Zara's eye in the mirror.
how was your private tasting with Carmen last night?
The flush that spread across Zara's face had nothing to do with the shop's warm lighting.
We were developing new flavor combinations.
Is that what they're calling it now?
At least I admit I'm dating someone.
Zara's eyes narrowed playfully.
Unlike some people with their professional dinners.
Sofia retreated to the dressing room, calling over the door.
Carmen told May you guys steamed up the walk-in window.
We were checking humidity levels.
With your tongs?
A red dress flew over the dressing room door, landing on Sofia's head.
Try this one.
Sofia emerged a few minutes later to find Zara texting, her face illuminated by the screen's glow, a smile softening her usually animated features.
Carmen?
Sofia teased, adjusting the dress's neckline.
She's asking what I'm wearing to dinner tonight.
Wearing or removing?
Both.
Zara looked up and gasped, her phone forgotten in her hand.
Oh yes, this is the one.
Sofia turned to the mirror and felt her breath catch. The red dress was not professional. It hugged every curve with the precision of a perfectly executed reduction sauce, the neckline suggesting rather than revealing, the hemline respectable, but the slit decidedly less so.
Marcus will combust.
Zara said with satisfaction, circling Sofia with a critical eye.
Spontaneously. Right there at the table, in front of all the other chefs.
It's too much.
Sofia tugged at the neckline, suddenly self-conscious in a way she hadn't been since culinary school.
It's perfect. Like a properly balanced dish, classic silhouette with a modern twist.
Zara adjusted the fall of the fabric over Sofia's hips.
Traditional enough for his sensibilities, but with some contemporary elements.
You're terrible.
I'm right. Besides,
Zara's grin turned wicked.
red is a traditional color. He'll appreciate that while he's appreciating other traditional elements.
Sofia felt her cheeks warm, the sensation reflected in the mirror.
It's a professional dinner?
Keep telling yourself that. Meanwhile, I'll just imagine his face when you bend over to taste his sauce.
I'm never telling you anything ever again.
Sure you won't. Just like you haven't told me about every lingering look, every accidental touch, every time he's corrected your technique with those hands.
Sofia retreated to the dressing room, the dress's fabric whispering against her skin as she moved.
How's Carmen's technique, by the way?
Excellent, thank you, especially her finger work with the piping bag.
I'm buying the dress just to shut you up.
You're buying the dress because you want Marcus to forget every traditional technique he's ever learned.
Later, over lunch at a cafe tucked between ancient stone buildings, Sofia watched the play of autumn light across the plaza's weathered cobblestones. Barcelona in October retained the memory of summer warmth while embracing autumn's clarity, like a perfect sauce that preserved the essence of its ingredients while transforming into something new. Zara watched Sofia nervously checking her phone for the third time in 5 minutes.
He's not going to cancel,
she said softly, reaching across the table to still Sofia's restless fingers.
I know that.
Sofia put her phone down, picked it up again, set it back on the table with deliberate care.
Sofia.
Zara caught her hand, her usually animated expression softening into something serious.
He rearranged the entire externship schedule to be near you. He's learned molecular gastronomy, which he once called culinary blasphemy, just to understand your perspective. The man practically trips over his own feet every time you demonstrate modern plating.
It's complicated.
Only because you're both making it complicated.
Zara's phone buzzed against the tablecloth. Her whole face transformed, lighting up from within as Carmen's name flashed on the screen.
Look who's talking about complicated.
Sofia teased, sipping her espresso.
Weren't you just complaining about Carmen's traditional family?
We're working on it.
Zara's fingers flew across her screen, typing a response.
She's teaching them to appreciate alternative techniques.
Is that what you're calling your walk-in activities?
Zara threw a napkin at her, the linen square fluttering ineffectually between them.
At least we admit we're dating. Meanwhile, you and Marcus are doing this elaborate dance of professional development that has everyone in the school taking bets on when you'll finally crack and make out in the spice closet.
There are bets?
Sofia nearly choked on her coffee.
May's got €50 on next week.
Sofia groaned, pressing her fingertips against her temples, but couldn't suppress the smile that threatened to crack her composed facade. Her phone buzzed against the tabletop, a text from Marcus confirming dinner. The simple message shouldn't have sent her heart racing like a soufflé in an overheated oven.
There.
Zara said smugly, pointing at Sofia's face.
Now you're glowing more than Carmen after our inventory checks.
You're impossible.
I'm right.
Zara stood, gathering their shopping bags with efficient movements.
Now come on. We need to find shoes that'll make him forget about traditional plating techniques entirely.
Sofia followed, the red dress feeling like a declaration of intent in its tissue-wrapped box. Her phone buzzed with a dating app notification. She looked at it for a long moment, the familiar alert suddenly seeming like an echo from someone else's life. She opened the settings menu and navigated to notifications with precise movements. Her finger hovered over the toggle switch. Not yet ready to delete the app entirely. That felt too much like commitment to something still undefined, but ready to silence its constant reminders of a life she'd used to fill her emptiness. Some traditions, she was learning, were worth breaking. Just, maybe not all at once. Chapter 17. Boiling Point. Sofia checked her reflection one last time, smoothing the red dress over her hips. The bathroom mirror in her apartment was small and slightly warped at one corner, a remnant of the previous tenant's carelessness that she'd never bothered to replace. Tonight, it transformed her reflection into something almost unfamiliar. A woman with purpose in her eyes instead of emptiness. Zara's voice echoed in her head. This is the one. Marcus will combust. She'd argued that the dress wasn't professional, but standing here now, the fabric clinging to every curve, the slit revealing just enough thigh to be interesting without being inappropriate. Well, perhaps professional wasn't what tonight was really about. Her phone buzzed against the bathroom counter, the vibration rattling her scattered makeup. A text from Marcus. At the Institute, Faculty Garden Patio. Enter through the side gate. Faculty Garden? Sofia frowned, copper-painted fingernails tapping against the porcelain sink. The planning dinner was supposed to be at Catalana, the fusion bistro downtown where Eduardo hosted his investor events. She texted back. Change of plans? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared like a sauce threatening to break. Thought we could test some recipes ourselves. More. Control over the environment. Sofia smiled, recognizing the particular word, choice. Control. Always his watchword. On my way, she replied, a flutter of anticipation replacing her earlier uncertainty. The Barcelona night embraced her as she stepped out, warm with just enough breeze to make her bare shoulders tingle. October in Catalonia carried the day's heat into evening, tempering it with hints of the coming autumn. Street lamps cast amber pools of light across the ancient cobblestones, illuminating centuries-old facades now housing trendy wine bars and boutiques. The Institute's wrought iron side gate was unlocked as promised, its ornate scrollwork casting elaborate shadows across the garden path. As she stepped through, the scent hit her first. Garlic, herbs, something rich and earthy simmering. Then she saw him. Marcus had transformed the faculty garden patio into something from a dream. String lights hung from the ancient olive trees, casting golden light over a single table draped in white linen. The weathered stone patio, usually cluttered with faculty lunch tables and ashtrays, had been swept clean and arranged with the precision of a 3-star dining room. He stood at a portable cooking station, sleeves rolled up to reveal those forearms that had become her private obsession. A dish towel hung over one shoulder in casual contradiction to his otherwise impeccable appearance. He hadn't noticed her yet, focused entirely on whatever he was sautéing, his face set in that expression of intense concentration she'd come to. Well, come to something.
This doesn't look very professional, Chef Blackwood.
She called softly, her voice carrying in the garden's intimate acoustics. He turned, spatula in hand, and froze. His eyes traveled from her face down the length of her body, lingering on the places where the red fabric embraced her curves, then back to her face. The spatula hovered, momentarily forgotten, over the pan. He opened his mouth, closed it, swallowed visibly.
You're early.
He managed finally, his accent more pronounced than usual. A tell she'd learned indicated emotional disruption to his carefully maintained composure.
Am I?
She moved closer, enjoying how his eyes darkened as the garden lights caught the movement of the dress.
Or perhaps you're just losing track of time.
The dress is...
He cleared his throat, eyes still cataloging every detail with the same attention he gave to perfect knife cuts.
Red.
Traditional color?
She teased, remembering Zara's words.
I thought you'd approve.
He seemed to struggle for words, a first for the typically articulate chef.
It's appropriate for the occasion.
Which is?
She stepped closer, the stone path cool beneath her impractical heels.
Recipe testing.
He turned back to his pan with what seemed like tremendous effort, his movements lacking their usual fluid grace.
For Thursday's fusion event.
Of course.
She approached the cooking station, deliberately stepping into his personal space. The portable burner's heat mingled with the warmth radiating from his body.
What are we making?
Spanish-French fusion.
His voice was rougher than usual, the cultured edges of his accent less defined.
Traditional techniques with modern presentations.
Sofia peered into the pan, letting her shoulder brush against his chest as she leaned forward. The contents sizzled, a perfect dice of Jamon Iberico browning alongside minuscule shallots, cut with mathematical precision.
Looks like you've started without me.
Just the mise en place.
He gestured to perfectly arranged ingredients, each component in individual glass bowls, arranged with architectural precision.
I thought we could collaborate on the execution.
The word hung between them, charged with meaning beyond their shared culinary lexicon.
I'd like that.
She reached past him for a wooden spoon, her hip brushing his as she leaned across the station.
Mind if I taste?
Marcus handed her the spoon, their fingers touching longer than necessary, the brief contact sending an electric current up her arm. She dipped it into the sauce, bringing it to her lips with deliberate slowness. His eyes tracked the movement, fixed on her mouth as she tasted.
Needs acid?
She murmured, rolling the flavor across her palate.
Impossible. The balance is perfect.
He straightened, professional pride momentarily overriding whatever else had been building between them.
Tradition speaking.
She reached for a lemon, deliberately pressing against him to reach across the station.
Let's try some innovation.
He watched, transfixed, as she squeezed just 3 drops into his carefully crafted sauce.
You're ruining...
Taste.
She commanded, holding out a fresh spoon. Their eyes locked as he accepted it, tasting the adjusted sauce with the critical evaluation of a master chef. Surprise flickered across his face, followed by reluctant pleasure that he couldn't quite conceal.
Better.
He admitted, the word almost pained.
The traditional foundation was perfect.
She said softly, still holding his gaze.
It just needed something unexpected to make it shine.
Something shifted in his expression, understanding that they weren't just talking about sauce anymore. The garden sounds intensified around them, the distant hum of Barcelona traffic, the rustle of olive leaves in the evening breeze, the gentle bubbling of the sauce reduction.
Perhaps.
He said carefully, setting down the spoon with deliberate precision.
We should continue this discussion over dinner.
The table, she discovered, was set with exquisite care. Fine china that must have come from the Institute's special collections, crystal glasses that caught and fractured the string light's glow, silver flatware arranged with architectural precision. So very Marcus in its attention to detail, yet the flowers, wild and vibrant in their casual arrangement, suggested he was embracing something less controlled. He held her chair, his hand brushing her bare shoulder as she sat. The contact sent electricity down her spine, goosebumps rising despite the evening's lingering warmth. He took his seat across from her, close enough that their knees almost touched under the small table.
Wine.
His voice had that slight huskiness again that she'd first noticed during their curriculum planning sessions.
Please.
As he poured, Sofia deliberately crossed her legs, letting the dress's slit reveal a flash of thigh. The wine sloshed slightly, another first for the typically precise chef. A droplet spattered onto the white tablecloth, a tiny imperfection that the old Marcus would have immediately addressed. This Marcus didn't seem to notice, his eyes still following the movement of her leg.
So,
She said innocently, accepting the glass.
these recipes we're discussing.
Right, recipes.
He seemed to gather himself, pulling a small leather-bound notebook from his pocket. The book's spine was cracked with use, its pages dog-eared and stained with the evidence of culinary experimentation.
I thought perhaps a progressive menu that moves from traditional to modern.
Her foot, freed from its heel, found his ankle under the table. His words faltered mid-sentence, a barely perceptible pause that nonetheless sent a thrill of satisfaction through her.
From traditional to modern.
He continued with valiant effort, opening the notebook to a page covered in his architectural handwriting.
Showing how the techniques can complement each other.
Compliment?
She echoed, her foot traveling higher. The fine wool of his trousers felt surprisingly soft against her toes.
I like that approach.
He cleared his throat, shifting in his chair.
I thought you might.
Their first course was his creation, a classical Spanish tortilla, perfectly executed but plated with modern minimalism. The expected disc had been transformed into a precise cylinder, garnished with micro-herbs and dots of saffron aioli that formed an abstract pattern across the white plate. Their fingers brushed as he passed her plate, and neither pretended it was accidental anymore. The air between them vibrated with unspoken possibilities.
Your technique is flawless.
She admitted, tasting the dish. The outer layer yielded with just the right resistance, revealing a center where each potato slice retained its individual integrity while contributing to the whole.
High praise from a modernist.
Even revolutionaries can appreciate mastery.
She took another bite, closing her eyes briefly in pleasure. When she opened them, his gaze was fixed on her mouth. As the meal progressed, so did their dance beneath the table. His foot found hers, then retreated. Hers advanced, then withdrew. With each course, they moved their chairs incrementally closer, until they were seated side by side rather than across from each other, ostensibly to better review his notes.
This fusion concept?
Sofia said, pointing to his diagram and deliberately leaning close enough that her breath warmed his ear.
It's actually quite exciting.
I've been expanding my horizons lately.
His voice was low, intimate.
Finding value in unexpected places.
Very untraditional of you.
Perhaps some traditions.
His hand dropped beneath the table, finding her knee through the slit in her dress.
Are meant to be challenged.
Sophia's breath caught. His hand was warm, strong, achingly still on her bare skin. Not advancing, not retreating, waiting. Always the perfect gentleman, even in this moment balanced on the knife's edge between professional and something else entirely.
And some innovations?
She whispered, covering his hand with hers and guiding it higher.
Aren't really that revolutionary after all.
His fingers traced a path along her inner thigh, stopping just short of where she suddenly, desperately wanted them. Their eyes locked, the pretense of professional dinner planning abandoned completely.
Sofia.
Her name on his lips was a question. She answered by closing the distance between them, her mouth finding his with unerring precision. For one startled moment he was still, and then control shattered. His hands were in her hair, on her waist, pulling her against him with a desperation that matched her own. The kiss was nothing like the technical efficiency of her meaningless hookups. It was messy, hungry, imperfect in all the ways that made it perfect. Sofia found herself on his lap somehow, the chair creaking ominously beneath them. His mouth was hot against her throat, hands exploring the curves the red dress had been showcasing all evening. A glass tipped over, spilling wine across his notes. Neither noticed.
Wait.
He gasped against her mouth.
Not here.
He stood with her still in his arms, the chair toppling backward with a clatter that echoed across the stone patio. She wrapped her legs around his waist, dizzy with the feeling of finally acting on weeks of simmering tension.
My office.
He managed between kisses.
It's closer.
They stumbled through the garden, unwilling to separate long enough for graceful movement. Sofia's back hit the door to the faculty building, Marcus fumbling for the key with one hand while the other slid higher on her thigh, finding the edge of her underwear.
Hurry!
She urged, nipping at his ear. The door finally gave way. They tumbled inside, Marcus kicking it closed behind them. His shirt tore as she pulled at it, buttons scattering across the tile floor with tiny percussive sounds. He growled, actually growled, into her neck, hands pushing her dress up around her waist.
God, Sofia.
He breathed against her skin.
I've wanted...
I know.
She gasped as his fingers finally slipped beneath the silk barrier of her underwear, pushing it aside rather than removing it.
Me too, for so long.
What followed was nothing like the choreographed, efficient encounters she'd grown accustomed to. It was messy, passionate, punctuated by breathless laughter when they knocked a stack of books to the floor, by soft curses when zippers stuck, by whispered confessions between desperate kisses. When they finally came together, her back against his desk, papers scattering beneath them, it wasn't with technical precision but with raw, honest need. His movements weren't practiced or perfect. They were urgent, almost clumsy with desire. His usual control abandoned completely. And it was that. The glimpse of Marcus Blackwood's perfectly controlled facade crumbling because of her, that pushed Sofia over the edge, his name on her lips not a performance, but a revelation. After, as they lay tangled together on the small couch in the corner of his office, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder, Sofia felt something she hadn't in years, maybe ever. Present, connected, seen.
That was...
He murmured against her hair.
Not very professional.
She finished, feeling his laugh rumble through his chest.
No,
He agreed.
definitely not that.
We never did finish planning the menu.
She pointed out, tracing an idle pattern on his skin. His arms tightened around her.
I think we established a successful fusion concept.
Traditional foundation.
With innovative execution.
He completed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him, this man who had somehow cracked through her carefully constructed walls. His hair was a disaster, sticking up in directions that would have horrified his normally meticulous self. His expression was more open than she'd ever seen it. The customary furrow between his brows erased, his eyes soft with something she wasn't quite ready to name.
We should probably be concerned.
She said, tracing the line of his jaw with her fingertip.
About the professional implications.
He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm that made her breath catch all over again.
Probably.
The school has policies?
That apply to student-teacher relationships.
He pointed out.
You're also faculty now.
Still complicated.
The best recipes usually are.
His eyes held hers, suddenly serious.
Sofia, this wasn't just...
She silenced him with a kiss.
I know.
She whispered against his mouth.
For me either.
His relief was palpable, his arms pulling her closer until she could feel his heartbeat against her own.
Good, because I've been wanting to do that since you corrected my brunoise demonstration.
Sophia laughed, the sound unfamiliar in its freedom.
I've been wanting to do that since you called my signature dish a tragedy in foam form.
Anger is aphrodisiac, very modern.
Says the man who just destroyed his office for a quickie.
Worth it,
He murmured, pulling her down for another kiss.
though perhaps next time we could try a actual bed?
Next time. The word sent a thrill through her that had nothing to do with physical pleasure, and everything to do with the promise they held.
Ambitious?
She teased.
We haven't even gotten through the appetizer course of our menu planning.
His smile was slow, wicked in a way she'd never seen before. It transformed his features, erasing the severe lines she'd first associated with him.
I believe we've established a solid concept,
He said, his hand sliding up her thigh again.
but perhaps we should test it again, to be thorough.
Professional thoroughness, Sophia thought as his mouth found hers again. That was one tradition she could definitely embrace.